Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you're watching this, if you want to watch it. I decided I was going to say something else, but I'm going to answer. I have here 6 questions that have come to me via emails, and I'm going to try to address them. This message might be a little longer than the previous couple, so it's like, John, Stephen, I know I get wordy. I know I do. I wouldn't listen to me, so I don't know why you're listening to me. But anyway, you turn me off anytime. Here are the questions. We're going to run right into them, okay? Run right into them, whatever. Pastor Steve, you've preached that politics is actually just another word for how we treat our neighbors, and have talked about how Christianity was a simple religion. Not an easy religion, but simple when you boil it down to its essentials. Love God, love your neighbor. That is what I mean when I use the word politics. Some of this is just a difference of definition, but essentially, how you act out in the world is political. That's how I use the word, okay? Whether you know it or not, there is this quote that says, "Justice is love out in the public." And so that's how I was raised to understand my calling as a Christian. Our faith should have us move from the sanctuary to the streets. It really should. And our love for God should move us in such a way that we should certainly love our neighbors, I would think, right? And then our love for neighbor has to be grounded and sustained by our love for God. It's a symbiotic relationship, all right, between these 2 commandments. Second question, or statement that I'm responding to. Pastor Steve, you're standing in opposition to other Christians with respect to what it is we're called to be and do, and how we're supposed to treat each other based on our faith. You tend to stand against a lot of Christians on this matter, on how we're called to be and do and live in this world, I guess is what's being asked here. What do we do, they go on, in response to the pervasiveness of white Christian nationalism? Okay. Well, I think it starts with speaking out, which I'm doing. For too long, too many Christians have allowed the powers that be to co-opt our faith tradition, as is happening right now. Thank you, present administration. And people out there in positions of power are using our faith to consolidate their wealth and power for themselves. And we've seen this. We've seen the results of being silent when this occurs. So many of us are just refusing to be silent now. Okay? There is so much power in Christians speaking out in defense of the gospel. Not in defense of that man in the White House, in defense of the gospel, okay? I won't waste my time in the other direction. And in defense of the scripture against powerful people who are corrupting our faith. And this is a story as old as Christianity itself. I've said it before, Constantine really was the first Christian nationalist, the Roman emperor back in 300 CE, 300 AD, 300, however you want to refer to the years. The emperor Constantine really was the first Christian nationalist. You know, a good Roman is a Christian now, and you support me, you support, whatever. Look it up in your history books. So this has been a battle that we've been fighting in our faith for thousands of years. Whether it was Constantine, whether it was Bull Connor. Remember Bull Connor? Yeah, have a another name for him. But that white supremacist back in the 60s, I think he passed away in early 70s, but he was a segregationalist, particularly in the 60s in Alabama, using the fire hoses and stuff. Way to go, Bull Connor. What a jerk. Yeah, I know. I've called him a jerk. Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, powerful people have used Christianity to further their own self-interests or justify their destructive political views. And at every point in history, there have been Christians who have said no to them. I'm thinking of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Martin Luther King Jr. I'm thinking of people who in dark times preached the true gospel and embodied a Christ-like love for God and neighbor. Those are the examples we should aspire to. There are always going to be conservative Christians, okay, and progressive Christians. And that's healthy. There's wisdom in conservatism, and there's wisdom in progressivism. Though you would never tell it by the way people are taking sides these days. That's a healthy conversation to have within the church between those groups. But conservative and progressive Christians alike, you need to unite and condemn the heresy of Christian nationalism. I would think we could agree on that, because it is a perversion of the gospel and a subversion of our American democracy. All right, third question. Pastor Steve, you said pastors are now confronted when they preach from Jesus' teachings on peace and justice. They're confronted with words saying to the pastor that that's just woke talking, or that's so weak. That's not us. We're strong. We're Americans. Rah, 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 rah. So the question is, how do we communicate with people when there's such a chasm in being able to share the common language of our faith? I think this is why there's such an urgency in preaching the gospel, and why this is at the core a theological crisis and not just a political crisis. This is a classic tension between Christianity and the culture. We are called as Christians not to conform to this world. I ain't conforming, Lordy. And it's because our faith is a countercultural one. That's why we're not to conform to the world. It's counterintuitive in our faith for the culture out there. It's counterintuitive, the idea that weakness is strength. That sharing with others is wealth. That equality is status. Christianity turns upside down the dynamics of the world, that bleeding man on a cross is the power of the universe. How is it that we seem to forget this? I mean, it boggles my mind, really, that Christianity is such a popular religion because it's so countercultural. I love it. It is questioning all the values that are dominant in the culture and have been dominant in the culture for thousands of years. That power is everything, and that wealth is everything. I mean, that seems to be the negotiating factor with our president and Zelensky. I mean, the president's wanting all this and that, whatever. I'm looking at it through the eyes of faith. I'm not looking at it as a business. And as I said, I think last week, our government should not be run as a business. But it's all about this right now, isn't it? What are you going to give us? We've given you so much. Really? How about loving your neighbor? Leave it alone. If you're blessed with opportunity okay, I'm going on a tangent. But if you're blessed with the opportunity to help others, especially a country that's been invaded. Anyway. So it's really important That we don't let our faith conform to the culture where power and wealth is everything. And that we don't allow what's subversive about Jesus and about Christianity to get watered down. I ain't about to have it watered down. I know I'm in hot water, but I ain't, whatever. You can let the water boil. I'm not going to let it get watered down, this message of Jesus in this world. This should be the central task for us. I think the world needs Jesus now more than ever. Our faith has so much to offer to the world at this moment of crises. But we can't do that if our faith is perverted. And if we end up just preaching the dominant cultural values from the pulpit. I don't know how loving your neighbor has suddenly become seen as something weak. I don't know how loving your neighbor became woke in the negative sense of that word. Because such a view of loving your neighbor and your enemy, to say it's weak, is the antithesis to the life, the death, and the teachings of Jesus. And every Christian, whether you're a conservative or a progressive, has a moral obligation to speak out against this heresy that we're being confronted with. Fourth question. Recently, this is, I'll do my best on this. Recently, Governor Brad Little signed a law that directs state funds to private school tuition. You've mentioned, Pastor Steve, your concern about Idaho going the route of school vouchers. Why should this matter to a Christian? All right. I'll be pretty blunt here. I call private school vouchers a scam. Because, like any scam, they sound good at first. But once you read the fine print, once you read the terms and conditions, you realize it's a ripoff, all right? Private school vouchers are pitched as ways to help poor kids or help students in struggling public schools go to elite private schools. But that is a political spin. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of the money ends up going to wealthy parents who already send their kids to private schools. Because, what we see in other states with vouchers is working class kids generally don't get admitted to the private schools. It's not so much a school choice by the working class parent of, which private school are we going to go to, as much as it is the school's choice, all right? The private school gets to decide who comes in and who doesn't. So, one, the private school denies admission, or the private school doesn't provide transportation, or it doesn't provide special education services, or the voucher doesn't cover the full cost of tuition, which means, again, working class, poor kids can't even take advantage of those other schools. A majority of counties in Idaho don't even have a single private school. Just saying. So rural areas, even if students could get admitted, there's no private school for them to attend in those communities. So for all those reasons, the vast majority of the money ends up going to the wealthiest families in the state so they can get a discount on their tuition bill. Yay! What I have said very clearly is that I can't think of anything more unchristian than stealing from the poor and giving it to the rich. We are defunding our public schools. That's what Idaho's proceeding to do. And essentially, to give wealthy families a tax break. That's how I'm seeing it. And to me, that is the opposite of what Jesus calls us to do. That's why this is a faith matter. Okay. I mean, there are more than 2,000 verses in the Bible, last I counted, about economic justice and serving the poor. Kind of an important matter. And I can't for the life of me understand how any Christian can support private school vouchers when, in practice, these policies, okay, benefit the rich at the expense of the poor. But fifth question. There's been a lot of talk about DEI lately, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and talk of ordering all schools that receive federal funding, from preschools up to post-secondary institutions, to eliminate their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and to stop teaching what they call the false claim that the United States is built upon systemic and structural racism. Sorry, it is. Can't change history, folks. Why is it that state legislatures care so much about these issues that they're willing to elevate this matter of DEI above so many other needs concerning our children's health and welfare? This is an interesting one. Because my take on it is that the politicians here, with this whole DEI thing, are attempting to divide us by race and culture and by religion. So we don't realize they are screwing all of us over by defunding our public schools or by cutting our health care. They want to distract us. This is the classic strategy of people in power, which is to conquer, is to divide and then conquer the people that you so successfully have at each other's throat. They want us looking to our left and to our right, at our neighbors, rather than looking up at them. Because really, politics is not a left versus right thing. It's a top versus bottom thing. That's what it is. We have seen just over the past few months that it is, and especially this past month or so, that it is the wealthy billionaire mega donors who are running the state governments and increasingly running our national government at the expense of working families. They constantly come up with culture war distractions to keep us from realizing all we have in common and to keep us from coming together across race and culture and religion, to take power away from those at the top and bring power back into our communities. That is what they're preventing us from doing. I try to focus on a politics of unity rather than a politics of division, because the latter is their game. And it's been the playbook of people in power throughout human history. Our challenge has to be different. We've got to show how much we all have in common so that we can come together and take back power for ourselves. Final question. Aren't you happy about this? Pastor Steve, where are you finding hope and strength for the struggle? A lot of us feel worn out, and it is always wondrous to discover some ways we might climb back up on our feet and get back in the fight. I want to be honest, like a lot of people, I'm feeling tempted by hopelessness. I think we should all be honest about that, but I keep thinking about that point in Scripture when Jesus says, "Blessed are those who weep." There's something important in our tears. Okay? I think Jesus is trying to say that our grief is a sign that we are still human, that we have empathy and the capacity for compassion, that our heart is still beating, that we're still alive. And we have to cherish that. I'm feeling a lot of the same sorrow that so many people are feeling right now. But I do think sorrow is an important reminder that we haven't given up yet, that we're not cynical, that we're not nihilists. Our hearts are breaking, and this shows, I do believe, that we still have hearts. That's an important thing to cherish. I find reasons to be hopeful all the time. I recently saw where the families of Uvalde, parents of the school where children were lost in the mass shooting at Robb Elementary. Those parents are continuing to fight to raise the age to buy semi-automatic rifles, to raise from the age of 18 to 21. For me, just get rid of the damn guns. But, that policy to raise the age from 18 to 21 for semi-automatic guns in Texas, 55% of Texans support it. Gun-toting state, but they support it. So here are these families advocating for this, even through their unimaginable grief. Still going up to that Capitol there to advocate for gun safety laws that could protect other people's children. God bless them. That kind of strength, that kind of perseverance, it gives me hope. It gives me strength to keep going, and I hope it does for you. Because if they can do that, then I certainly can do what I need to do each day to keep struggling forward. And I feel like I find those kinds of reasons every day. It doesn't mean I'm not still heartbroken over what's going on in our nation, but that heartbreak shows that there's still a heart beating in my chest. And that is something to hold on to. I hope and pray you do the same. God bless you. Peace be with you always.